Have you ever felt an unshakable silence within? A persistent whisper that, despite your best efforts to stay occupied, you're merely going through the motions? You surround yourself with people, chase goals, fulfill obligations, yet deep down, something essential feels absent. It's as if you're existing, not truly living. Perhaps you've labeled this feeling as anxiety. Maybe a doctor has diagnosed it as depression, offering medication to dull the discomfort. A pill in the morning, another at night. Time passes and the numbness sets in, silencing what might be an urgent internal message. But what if this suffering isn't a mistake? What if it's not something to suppress but a call to attention? Carl Gustav Jung, a pioneer in depth psychology, proposed that what we often term mental disorders are not pathologies, but the psyche's attempts to heal itself. A warning that our current way of living doesn't serve our soul. You might be entangled in routines imposed upon you. A job that drains you, relationships that deplete your energy, dreams that aren't truly yours. Meanwhile, your essence cries out for freedom. But no one taught you to listen to that cry. Instead, we've been taught to silence it, to conform, to avoid causing disruption. And so, we fall ill in silence, while the world applauds our productivity. Jung believed that healing doesn't come from denial, but from diving into our inner world. It's not about masking symptoms, but understanding what they're trying to convey. In his words, neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering. In other words, our ailments arise because we're avoiding the pain necessary to transform our lives. As long as we keep running, we'll continue to suffer. This message isn't for those seeking distraction. It's for those tired of pretending, who feel they're sinking but still hold a spark of hope that there's another way. And there is. But it begins with the courageous decision to stop running and start listening. Listening to yourself, to your unconscious, to the pain you've tried to silence with medication, addictions, routines. If you've made it this far, you may have realized that the emptiness you feel isn't weakness. It's the absence of yourself in your own life. And it's time to change that. You've been feeling down for days, weeks, maybe months. You visit a doctor who listens for a brief moment, if at all. You talk about insomnia, anxiety, a tightness in your chest that appears without reason, a constant feeling of being out of place, disconnected from your own existence. He nods, types a few words, and delivers the verdict. It's anxiety. Let's start with this medication. And just like that, your pain is reduced to a chemical imbalance. And what was an existential cry becomes a number on a prescription label. What no one tells you is that this type of treatment isn't interested in your soul. It's interested in your functionality. The logic is simple. You need to keep working, consuming, producing, keeping the gears of the system turning. The medication allows you to endure the unbearable, and that's why it's offered as a definitive solution. But this solution, as Jung suggested, is a trap. He believed that most modern neuroses don't arise from an internal failure of the brain, but from the disconnection between the life we lead and the life we should be living. When you ignore your vocation, your most authentic impulses, your inner truths, the soul begins to sicken. And since it has no literal voice, it speaks through the body and mind. Anxiety, panic attacks, hopelessness. Instead of listening, we're trained to silence it, to neutralize any discomfort with chemicals, to return to normal as quickly as possible. But what is this normal? A job you hate but can't quit? Superficial relationships that serve to maintain appearances? Empty goals, mechanical routines, and a constant feeling that you're surviving instead of living? The anxiety you feel isn't a failure. It's your soul telling you, this life is not yours. You're betraying me. And if you ignore this for too long, the body starts to scream louder. But the system is always ready with a new dose, a new label, a new sedative. The more you adapt to this model, the further you distance yourself from yourself until you feel nothing anymore. Neither pain nor pleasure. Just this chronic numbness they call adult life. Jung warned that by medicating the symptom without understanding its root, we create an illusion of healing. The person improves on the outside, but remains lost inside. In the long run, this division between what is felt and what is lived generates an even greater collapse, because there's no way to escape the soul forever. It will demand its price, whether in the form of burnout, emotional collapses, or through an emptiness that nothing, absolutely nothing, can fill.
This mass medicalization reflects something deeper. A culture that doesn't know how to deal with suffering, that fears pain because it has lost the sense of its transformative value. For Jung, suffering was necessary. It was the beginning of the journey, the call to individuation. But in modern society, any discomfort is labeled as pathological. By fleeing from suffering, we also flee from the chance to become who we should be. The question remains, how many people are being silenced by treatments that merely camouflage the problem? How many lives are being wasted in the name of artificial stability? How many journeys have been interrupted before they even began? To start answering this, we need to look at what lies behind modern emotional collapse. This leads us to the next point. The environment we live in, the cultural structures that shape our identity, and the lifestyle that is often the true illness. Because perhaps the problem was never you, but the world that taught you to hate yourself. Have you ever wondered why so many people are suffering emotionally, even when surrounded by material comfort, technology, and supposed freedoms? We've never had such access to information, entertainment, and stimuli, yet we've never been so disconnected from ourselves. The root of modern psychological suffering isn't only within the mind, it's in the environment that shapes us from birth. Jung understood this with brutal clarity. For him, the problem wasn't just individual, it was cultural, structural. We live in a society that glorifies appearance but neglects essence, that rewards efficiency but ignores the soul. From an early age, we're shaped to follow a script: study, choose a safe career, be productive, consume, smile for photos, and hide any signs of vulnerability. We grow up being taught to please, to compete, to win. But no one teaches us to listen to our intuition, to understand our feelings, to ask ourselves, what makes my life worth living? This absence of meaning isn't a coincidence. It's programmed. We've been conditioned to believe that our identity comes from outside, from the title we carry, the salary we receive, the approval we earn. But Jung knew that this is a fatal trap. Because when the value you see in yourself depends on external standards, you're permanently exposed to frustration. Worse, you distance yourself from your inner nature, from your unconscious, from your soul. And that's where the emptiness begins to grow. Slowly, silently. It takes over your routine. You meet all the expectations, check off all the items on the list, but still feel out of place. You feel like you're living someone else's life, that something is wrong, but you can't explain what. What you're feeling isn't weakness, it's disconnection. Disconnection from what's true, spontaneous, instinctive. This disconnection, according to Jung, fuels the deepest psychological disturbances. But society doesn't want you to realize this,
because disconnected people are easier to control. They consume more, question less, follow orders without resistance. They're useful, docile, predictable. And when they finally collapse, when anxiety, depression, or burnout hit them hard, the system responds with palliatives, never with the truth. Jung said that to heal, the individual needs to confront the world that hurt them. They need to understand how they were conditioned, what was repressed, what was sacrificed in the name of acceptance. This is a painful task, because it involves admitting that you lived a life that wasn't yours, that you shaped yourself to fit into a mold that suffocated you, that you were domesticated by a culture that fears the human soul. But it's also the only way out, because only by recognizing the origin of your emptiness can you begin the journey to fill it with truth. This journey has a name: individuation, the deep and transformative process that Jung believed to be the true path to healing. There comes a moment in life when pain can no longer be ignored, when the social mass begins to weigh too heavily, when you realize you're living as if you're only half, or worse, a caricature of who you truly are. It's at this breaking point that, according to Jung, the most important journey a human being can undertake begins: the journey of individuation. But what does it really mean to individuate? Jung wasn't talking about superficial self-help or minor habit changes. He referred to a deep, almost mythical process in which the individual ceases to be a reflection of the external world, of family, culture,